Ave Regina, Mater misericordiae, vita dulcedo, estes nostra salve.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. Luke. Herod the Tetrarch heard about all that was happening, and he was greatly perplexed, because some were saying John has been raised from the dead. Others were saying Elijah has appeared. Still others, one of the ancient prophets has arisen. But Herod said, John I beheaded. Who then is this about whom I hear such things? And he kept trying to see him. The Gospel of the Lord. When I was a new pastor, I had a parishioner, I'll call her Edna. And Edna was one of the most negative people I've ever met. I think she had a lot of anger. She was, I would say, in her mid to late 70s at the time. And she came to everything, but she was always negative about it. You could say, Edna, it's a beautiful day today. And she'd say, oh, it's going to rain tomorrow. Edna, I'm glad you're here at the supper, our parish supper. Oh, the food's terrible. Edna, you're coming to the parish mission tomorrow night. Why bother? And she still come. She came to everything and was always negative. One day, after Mass, she came out and she looked different. And she had a big smile. And she said, oh, Jesus is good. I love you, Father Rick. And I thought, someone kidnapped Edna and replaced her. Each week it was like that, and she was so peaceful, and other people began to notice it. I said, Father Rick, what's up with Edna? I've known her for 60 years. She's never been like this. And I never found out what happened. We just, I think, kind of accepted it for about a year and a half before she died. She was filled with peace. And it was actually one of my favorite funerals I've ever celebrated, because I thought I watched a miracle in my life. I saw a miracle in my life. A woman who probably had a lot of woundedness. I don't know what exactly her background was. I know a little bit. But why I'm bringing her up is I thought about it last night as I was preparing the gospel. She came to everything. Even with her negativity, she came to everything. She kept searching for Jesus. I don't want to discourage you that it took 80 years for her to find him, but she found him. She never gave up. She was miserable. She made other people miserable, but she kept coming to Mass. She kept coming to confession. She kept coming to the sacraments. She kept coming to parish dinners, parish missions. She kept coming. She never gave up. And I wish I would have had the courage to ask her what happened. But she kept saying, Jesus is so good. Jesus is so good. And telling everybody that she loved them. I think she made up for the 80 years she didn't tell anybody she loved them. In our gospel today, we have, and I'm not comparing him to Edna, he was truly nasty. Herod was truly nasty, evil, broke all the commandments, didn't care. And he had John the Baptist killed. And he had him killed because he was afraid of his own reputation. It wasn't because of the adultery. He just put him in jail because of the adultery, because John the Baptist was speaking against it. But it was his reputation had John the Baptist killed. And then he's hearing about all these wonderful things that Jesus is doing. And maybe part of it was fear. Maybe his conscience was being touched a bit. But it says right in the gospel today, he kept wanting to see Jesus. He kept wanting to see him. But in the gospel, we find he doesn't encounter him until a long time later. And this is what we hear. So we heard Luke, the beginning of Luke. This is Luke 23, after Jesus is arrested. It says, when Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad. Right? We heard that today. He wanted to see Jesus. He was very glad. For he had long desired to see him. Now he is. Because he had heard about him. And he was hoping to see some sign done by him. So Herod questioned Jesus at some length, but Jesus made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. So they're yelling. So Herod is trying to talk to Jesus. The Pharisees, they're yelling, screaming. They just wanted to condemn him. And Herod, with his soldiers, treated Jesus with contempt and mocked him. Then clothing him in gorgeous apparel, he sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with each other. That is a very sad verse. Because in that moment, Herod could have become friends with Jesus. Herod could have become friends with Jesus. He was searching for him, and then he stopped. And he joined in the mockery and the hatred of Jesus. He didn't get what he wanted from Jesus. And so he stopped. He didn't persevere. And he made fun of him, clothed him even in beautiful clothing, in mockery. And then to hear that day, he became friends with Pilate. They hated each other, Pilate and Herod. And now they become friends in their mutual hatred of Jesus. Very sad. How amazing if this gospel we would have heard and Herod repented and Herod converted. What a powerful witness that would have been. But it did not happen. And so what about us? We're called to persevere, to keep seeking Jesus, even when we get what we don't want. Edna, she kept searching. I don't think it will take you 80 years if you really desire and say, Jesus, enter into my heart. I desire you. Help me to know you. Help me to love you. Because he's already chosen you, and he's chosen me. If we choose Jesus, we're just responding. We don't choose Jesus and he says, okay, now I come to you. He is choosing us in this moment and asking us for a response. He's already searching for us and has found us. All we need to do is say, Jesus, let me be found. Very simple. Let us pray that the Eucharist that we receive today may strengthen us in perseverance in our faith, and when we have doubts and difficulties and challenges, challenging situations in our life, instead of bitterness and forgiveness, may we do what Edna did. and say, Jesus is good. And allow the love to come forth out of us like it came out of her.
Regina Celi, letare, alleluia, qui aquam meruisti portare, alleluia, resurrexit sicut dixit, alleluia.